Good morning. All right. I just walking in here ran into someone who I hadn't seen since last year's event, a dear friend, and she looked at me and said two things. She first said, "God, you look so tired," and then before I could say anything, said, "Oh my God, and look at all your gray hair." So really inspiring pep talk for me here for this speech. So to those of you who are here looking for a career change or for inspiration or for some sort of connection or redirection in your life, we lift you up and we say welcome. We're really happy that you're here. To those of you who have never taught and want to give it a shot, we lift you up and we say we're here to support you and we're really happy that you're here. To those of you who are teachers wanting to move into leadership, we lift you up and we say, go for it. And we're really happy that you're here. To those of you who are African American or Asian or Hispanic or Native American or white or mixed race or any other ethnicity or race, we lift you up and we say welcome, and we are really happy that you're here. To those of you who are from a country outside of the United States, we lift you up and we say, welcome. We are very, very happy that you are here. To those of you who are Hindu or Jewish or Christian or Muslim or atheist or any other religious or cultural affiliation, we lift you up and we say welcome to you. We're so happy that you're here. To those of you with a disability or a health concern or a mental or physical limitation, we lift you up and we say welcome. We're really happy that you're here. To those of you who went to public schools or Catholic schools or independent schools, if you were homeschooled or if you bounced around from Army base to Army base attending a whole smorgasbord of schools, we lift you up and we're really happy that you're here. To those of you who are gay or straight or bi or transsexual or transgender, to parents and guardians, people with families that don't match up neatly according to a traditional family tree, we lift you all up. We say right on. We say you're welcome here, and we're so happy that you're with us today. To those of you who somehow feel unsupported or lonely or swimming upstream with the current rushing by you, we lift you up and we say that we're here to support you and welcome. My name is Devereaux McClatchey and I'm the president of Carney Sando & Associates. On behalf of our entire organization, I'd like to welcome each of you with open arms and with a friendly, generous spirit to our second annual Diversity Forum here in Philadelphia. Now at this point, I'd like to ask each of you to find someone you don't know and do two things. This will only take a minute. I'd like to ask you to please introduce yourself, and secondly, to share something with this person about your identity that has at some point in your life made you feel somehow different. It can be something that's relatively easy to share, like for me, I'm left-handed, could say that, makes me feel different. Or something more vulnerable, like for me, I could say I'm the child of an alcoholic. That makes me feel different. If you'll please find someone that you don't know and take under 1 minute and do this and come right back. Thanks. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so out there in the ether now, we have hundreds and hundreds of differences floating around in the air, buzzing over our heads and in and out of every breath that we take. But we're all breathing the same air, and we're all here in this room together. And together we're all included and empowered, breath by breath and piece by piece. Let's let these differences melt into a mosaic of kindness and understanding. Let's embrace the notion that we're all different, that we're all searching, and that we're all in need of support and acceptance. Indeed, we hope you've already seen our theme for this event, Included and Empowered Piece by Piece. Our hope is that you will all feel included and strengthened and inspired by your time here today. If last year's event is any indication, we suspect that you will. And speaking of last year's event, let's talk about it for a minute. Looking back, one of the issues we talked about the most was how desperately our schools, particularly the boards of our schools, needed to increase their diversity, and this certainly remains true today. But in retrospect, would it not have been even more appropriate, or at least more self-reflective, to talk about the need for Carney Sando and Associates to diversify, and more broadly, the need for placement and executive search firms to reshape themselves to include more consultants of color, more women, and more people from diverse backgrounds and orientations? I'm reminded of a verse from my own religious tradition. Why do you look at the speck that's in your friend's eye, but you don't notice the log that's in your own eye? First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your friend's eye. You all remember that one? It's unacceptable that Carney Sando and Associates is by far the most diverse search firm working in K through 12 education, when we are, in fact, really not that diverse at all. Search firms, or as some folks like to say, gatekeepers, should shoulder an enormous responsibility in determining who is seen and who is not seen by schools. And no matter how open-ended we like to tell ourselves we are, open-minded, if we are made up primarily of non-diverse consultants, our context will inevitably be limited, our perspectives will be myopic, and our search work will continue to perpetuate unchallenged conventions and judgments. So this needs to change. While we can't control how or by whom other firms staff their organizations, we can control our own. Therefore, it's our discrete goal to move forward aggressively in diversifying our own organization, and we hope that next year we'll have some positive news to share on this front. Maybe we can serve as a model for other firms. How exciting to think about the whole industry of executive search lifted up by a significant increase in minority representation. If there were dozens of black search consultants working on head of school searches, for example, do you not think the number of African American headships would increase? And on this point, if any of you are here today and you're interested in a career in placement or executive search work, we'd love to talk to you. My email address, in case I don't connect with you today, is dev@carneysando.com, D-E-V, as in victory. Turning back to last year's event, we said then and will say today that this is primarily a learning experience for us. We don't pretend to know much. That's one reason why we recruited such an incredible faculty to help you navigate so many of these complex issues. So what have we learned so far? We've learned that teachers of color often feel like they're overlooked for internal promotions or advancement, even when their experience and performance would suggest that they would be excellent candidates for the job. We've learned that the single greatest asset that sitting heads of color identify when thinking about what helped them land their first headship is usually a mentor or a network of mentors who stood by them and nurtured them every step of the way. We've learned that retention of faculty of color at independent schools suffers because teachers of color often feel isolated or unsupported or stereotyped into certain prescribed roles. We've learned that money really matters, particularly for candidates with limited financial resources and huge college debt loans. And so when choosing between a teaching job at $45,000 or an industry job at $80,000, they often feel they have no choice, even when they'd rather teach. We've learned that there's a growing body of scientifically backed research showing that diversity in the workplace or in the school environment has the effect of increasing innovation and increasing performance. We've learned that Hispanic representation among both students and faculty at independent schools is abysmally low, even while it's the fastest growing demographic in our country. We've learned that the best progress we can make is to work on our own issues related to diversity and cross-cultural competencies, and to try and improve our own self-awareness, to dial in deeper into our own unintended biases, and to do the work ourselves. To this end, we've engaged some expert facilitators for a series of internal workshops, including Derek Gay and our own Sherry Coleman, to help us grow and discover. We've learned that increasing diversity and pushing forward in cross-cultural work can dramatically benefit those groups of students and faculty who might not normally be considered diverse, i.e. white, male, and/or financially privileged. We've learned that we at Carney-Sando could do a much better job coaching job seekers who are not familiar with the sometimes peculiar and confusing independent school culture and vernacular. We've learned that if schools truly want to increase the diversity of their faculty, they must abandon the outdated and stultifying criteria of, first, independent school experience, and second, Ivy League or NESCAC backgrounds as some sort of prerequisite for consideration. We've learned, thank you, Derek, that all organizations are by definition 100% diverse, and what an opportunity that is to rethink issues related to inclusion and understanding. We've learned as we've tried to drill deeper into why so few heads of color continue to be hired, that more attention needs to be paid to the upper school head position and the meager number of leaders of color who fill those roles. Indeed, by our own tracking, about 6% of upper school head jobs are currently occupied by leaders of color among our member schools, and it seems to be around 4 to possibly 5% among other independent schools. Along these lines, with the Super Bowl a week away, it's worth noting the New York Times article from just about a week ago that was citing a large study that investigated why there are currently so few head coaches of color in the NFL. There are actually fewer now than there were 10 years ago. Their conclusion: it's all related to the lack of minority hiring among the assistant coaching ranks. Our schools suffer from the same problem. Unless more candidates of color infiltrate the ranks of division heads and associate heads, we will not see large gains in headships for leaders of color. Still, there's reason for hope, and momentum is building. While faculty of color seem to have only grown by 1 or 2% in the last few years to a median average of 12% in independent schools, students of color continue to grow at a strong clip. The median average is now approaching 30%. This is great news. Also, we are seeing significantly more diverse student populations on college campuses during our recruitment trips. More good news. Because of the persistent and unyielding work of so many of you in this room, as well as so many others at the annual POCC and other professional development events, we're seeing a marked increase in cross-cultural competency work at our schools. And we're noticing more schools moving away from the model where the director of development is supposed to somehow magically handle all the matters related to race or differences, with more schools now seeming to embrace a healthier, more comprehensive approach. And speaking of POCC, let me just say how often we hear of the wonderful role that conference has played in so many people's lives through the years. Teachers and students talk about the family that they feel there, the acceptance and support that recharges their engines and gives them strength. Kudos to Caroline Blackwell and all the other good folks at NAIS who give life to that conference. We invited Caroline to join us here today, but unfortunately she couldn't make it. In closing, a few thank yous. Thank you, Carlos Urea, for living with us for 3 years and teaching me that Colombians speak the most beautiful Spanish. Thank you, Mom, for teaching me that the strongest men are feminists. thank you, Seong Tan Wei, for living with us for 4 years and teaching me that being white is something worth thinking about. Thank you, Kim and Jessica and Jonathan and Ada and Molly, and Sarah, Steve, and everyone else for working miracles with this event. And finally, thanks to all of you here for your good energy and your passion. We're all in this together, and we hope you're as fired up as we are for a fantastically empowering day. Thank you.